Today, I'm proud to introduce you to Dr. Grant Venerable, the author of the newly released first part of a four-part memoir, Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown. Dr. Venerable, you and I know each other very well, and so it's a pleasure to get an opportunity to talk to you about a new project that you hinted at when we first spoke. So let's talk about your new book. Can you give me a basic overview?
Yes. It's a book of, number one, it's not only about my life from my birth to the present day, but it's about the lives of my parents, my extended family, and their ancestors. But it gives it the account in the context of American society and the major events in that society that affected their lives. At least one strong male who was my great-grandfather, and that great-grandfather happened to be the son of his owner and the son of his mother, who was my great-great-grandmother. And how that dynamic shaped up, how that came about, keeping track of great-great-grandmother's offspring, which were 8. That's what we could count in the records that my grandfather kept. Those records are now at the University of Kansas and in the library, the Spencer Research Library.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very important records because these people ultimately migrated into Kansas. So that's why University of Kansas was an appropriate place for these records. But that's where the shift came from victimization to self-agency in the whole family. So that when people would get a thought about, a hankering about what their goals were, they did not let fears and thoughts of being victims stop them. That's really underlying a lot of the way I teach in the classroom. Teach young people not just to avoid victimization, but to take charge of their lives.
What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
The theme is a paradigm. I've developed a paradigm. That is, everyone uses the word meme these days, but a paradigm is the gigantic meme that encloses an entire society. So the meme that I'm challenging is the one that we live in as a society, which started with Galileo when he identified the moons of Jupiter, comes up through Isaac Newton, and it gets us into this linear causality. But my meme is a meme of capturing a vision of how I want my world to be and how to create that world. So that's really what the book is about. It's about looking at the current paradigm that structures the world right now. I'm looking at flipping that paradigm. Basically, that's what my book is about. How do I flip that paradigm in my own life, the life of my fellow co-descendants, and come into a whole new way of operating in the world?
What does writing do for you? What do you actually hope to accomplish by writing?
My writing primes my memory. When the memory is primed, I have deep memories of my past, and I'm able to chart out my life, what it means. I discovered something called the Venn matrix of the system, and the book reflects on how someone could invent something like the Venn matrix. Pretty much today, most people understand an organization chart that shows a vertical top-down view of an organization. And so it's a very material, linear, logical view of an organization. Well, you could treat a family the same way. Who's the boss and who are the subordinates? My life flipped over upside down when I was 8 with the loss of my mother to malignant hypertension, which took her out pretty quickly. And what I realized over the years is that I survived because of my extended family that was there around and supportive of the nuclear family, which was now a father and 3 kids, and previous books. They're lacking the change domain, and they're especially lacking the center, because there's nobody that enforces the values, because they haven't figured out their values. What holds this system together? So it's nothing. It's the markets. There's people that are in charge in an organization chart. There's people who are directors, and there's their buildings and their other resources, but that's all we got. So that's what this book really addresses, is how I deal with that.
And I know, sir, the book is a part of a 4-part memoir, as I mentioned when we first started. Do you want each book to stand on its own, or are you really trying to build a body of work with connections between each book?
I want to do that, especially, but each book can stand on its own, but it's more helpful if you have the previous books to give you the background.
I got it. They each form a bit of a building block
It's a
to a
building
fuller
block.
picture.
So the first book is age birth to age 22. And the second book is roughly age 23 to when I finished graduate school around age 27. And then the third book goes into my first careers and to my final big position at Lincoln University as the provost of the university. And the last one is the spiritual journey.
So you've actually described this particular book as your opus magnum, a memoir 9 years in the making. And I appreciate you giving us some of the highlights. But I'm curious, how has your training in chemistry and physics actually affected the way you view the world? You were starting to tell us a little bit about that now.
The chemistry and physics gives me the take of the material universe. It takes me as far back as we can go in terms of explaining natural phenomena, whether it's biological phenomena, the COVID-19 virus. It came from somewhere, and that's what biologists attempt to explain with theories, but it starts with theories of physics and mathematics. But I use those theories to try my best to understand social phenomena. Now, that's the radical thing.
I'm curious, as you've gone through so much of your life and shared it in your writings, how have your life lessons actually shaped the way you approach your students?
I think they were really well shaped by the time I taught at Cal Poly. And after being there for 6 years, I could, in all faithfulness, tell the class that you don't belong in any class that I'm teaching unless your ultimate goal is to live a successful life that's healthy and sane, and that you're achieving the goals that you want. That sounds simple, but not everyone really wants to do that, or at least do exercise the self-discipline that gets there. But it means you stop dealing with life as fragments and parts, pieces, disconnected. You start seeing things as an interrelated whole. And that's the whole way I taught chemistry, was using it. Heck, I didn't even taught chemistry for 2 or 3 weeks, which worried my colleagues to death. They said, well, that young man isn't even teaching chemistry. Well, I was teaching the basic universals of the human mind first.
You know, Dr. Venerable, it behooves me because of the kind of work that you've done over the years and the insight that you have brought to current events, to just ask you what your thoughts are on some of the current events and how they have impacted race relations in America. I'm speaking mainly of the protests resulting from George Floyd's murder, as well as just the concept of Black Lives Matter, sir.
I speak not as a everyday devotee of Black Lives Matter as like an organization. I think they've been a potent force, and I've been more respectful of what they've been able to achieve. I came through that period. So I was about 23 years old when the Watts conflagration occurred in Los Angeles, and nobody understood that. It frightened the middle class people of Los Angeles, whether they were Black people or brown people or white people. But it eventually came out as to what was behind that, what was driving it. And the same drivers are present today. So the latest episodes right here in Atlanta, but starting in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Seattle,
right?
I was amazed to see the protests spread. But first, I was amazed to look at the TV footage of the police officer with his knee on George Floyd's neck. And that was the meme that came across that was so different from other footage that said, wait a minute, this officer is enjoying the heck out of this. He's getting probably a lot of thrill out of it. And so he just stayed there, his hands in his pocket. I think that's what hit all of America. I want the book, through the examples that I go over, my experiences in the classroom. I learned chemistry in a way I had no right learning because I didn't have quite the powerful background that some of my classmates had. But I developed it based upon the tools I was guided to learn, that those tools are a potential paradigm shift to flip the way education is now done, using myself as a guinea pig, as a test tool. So that's the main takeaway from
Fantastic. Lest the world think that all you do is think through academia, let me ask you just something fun. Are there some activities that you'd like to pursue in your spare time when you are not trying to flip the paradigm?
Well, the irony is they helped flip the paradigm. These intertwined things. As I told you before, my first little skill was art, doing drawing, doing painting. And then I took that to kindergarten, and I took music. My mother was a pianist.
I know you love music.
I learned music, but I learned to use art and music to learn chemistry. I don't know how I did that, but it was from the evening my father took me out on the Mojave Desert where we were staying with relatives, 100 miles from LA, no light around, so we could see the whole universe up there. And that's where I got the inspiration for my paintings of molecules and chemical reactions.
See, of course, only you. I ask you what you do in your spare time, and all of it still comes back to chemistry and science. I love it. I love it. Dr. Venerable, I so enjoy chatting with you all the time. We want to congratulate you on the accomplishment of the newly released first part of the 4-part memoir, Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown. Thank you again, Dr. Venerable.
Thank you, Star.